My mom and my sister got in Leo's car. I felt the 10 grand in my pocket, and a smile crept across my face. Everyone in town just called me that damn thief. I'd earned it. I'd stolen a classmate's fancy calculator, lifted cash from the high school activity fund, and even boosted Old Man Hemlock's vintage pickup. I'd done time, 12 stints in total, counting juvie. So watching my mom and my sister get into a car with a guy I knew was a human trafficker. Well, it felt like a weight off my chest. A deep, satisfying relief. I ran my thumb over the crisp stack of bills in my pocket. $10,000. Damn, it felt good. I never thought you could make so much money just for introducing someone to a job opportunity. 5 grand ahead. What felt even better was finally getting rid of the 2 mountains that had been crushing me for over 20 years. Feeling light on my feet, I walked straight into the fanciest restaurant in our little town of Harmony Creek, the Summit Diner. The sign was so old and faded you could barely read the words, and it looked like a strong gust of wind would send it clattering to the pavement. The irony wasn't lost on me. Hey, a double bacon cheeseburger, fries on the side. My voice boomed, loud enough that it sounded strange even to my own ears. Pops Callahan, the owner, looked up from behind the counter, his eyes full of the usual contempt. He leaned over to the couple at the next table and lowered his voice, but I heard him clear as day. "It's that damn thief. Watch your wallets." Those words, "that damn thief," hit the room like a thunderclap. The few other customers tensed up. The guys in the corner booth instinctively slapped their back pockets. It was true. That's what they'd all been calling me behind my back for the last 10 years. It started a decade ago, back in middle school. One day, I saw a brand new graphing calculator on my deskmate's desk. A TI 84, sleek and black. It was like nothing I'd ever seen up close, a little piece of the future, and I couldn't look away. The moment the final bell rang, I practically sprinted home, possessed by a need to have one just like it. "Mom, I need to get a graphing calculator," I said, standing nervously by the stove. She didn't even look up from the sizzling pan. "Money? Where am I supposed to get money? You think your sister's college applications and SAT prep courses are free?" She waved the spatula impatiently, and a few drops of hot grease splattered onto my arm, stinging like hell. "A calculator?" My dad chimed in from the living room. "I barely made it through high school, and I never needed some fancy gadget. Don't you even think about asking for money for toys." I knew it was useless. It had always been this way. Our family had one golden rule. My sister, Brittany, came first. My mom always said a daughter was a blue-chip stock. You invest in her, she marries well, and you get a return. A son, she'd say, was a money pit. You just keep throwing cash in and get nothing back. "I need it for class." I mumbled. Smack. My mom's hand cracked across my face. "Get out of my sight. I'm sick of looking at you." I stumbled back, my cheek burning, and fled to my cramped room, a glorified closet filled with junk. The tears that streamed down my face tasted salty and bitter. The next day, during recess, my deskmate went outside. I slipped the calculator into the deepest corner of my backpack. My heart hammered against my ribs all the way until the final bell, my palms slick with sweat. No one noticed. When I got home, I shoved it into the darkest, deepest crack in the wall behind my bed. "Caleb," Pops Callahan's voice pulled me back from the memory, dripping with disdain. "A bacon cheeseburger? You got cash? Or are you planning on putting this on a tab you'll never pay?" "I got it." I snapped back to the present. I pulled out a fresh $100 bill and slapped it down on the counter. The sound echoed in the quiet diner. "Is that enough for you?" I asked, my voice rising. Pop's face twitched. His eyes darted from the bill to my face and back again before he forced a grimace that was supposed to be a smile. "Right? Yeah, coming right up." "Caleb," a voice called from the corner booth. It was hesitant. "How long you been out?" I glanced over. It was Kevin Miller, my old deskmate from middle school. He was back in town visiting from some construction job out of state. He used to copy my homework. That first calculator I stole, it was his. "A few days," I grunted, turning away. I didn't want to talk. That was 3 years, right? For Old Man Hemlock's truck. Kevin kept talking, oblivious. His voice wasn't loud, but everyone could hear him. "Man, that whole thing with his truck. They say the stress of it is what gave him the heart attack. A real shame. Everybody in town knew how much he loved that thing." His words were like a bucket of ice water dumped over my head. It was true. 3 years ago, I'd stolen the vintage Ford pickup our neighbor, Old Man Hemlock, had spent his life restoring. I sold it for parts for 5 grand. The old man had a massive coronary a week later and died. The court called me a repeat offender and gave me 3 years. Now I was out, but in a town like this, being out was just another kind of prison. My life of crime really started when I was 12. That summer was brutally hot, the cicadas buzzing so loud it felt like they were inside my skull. I just got my final report card, straight A's, top of my class, and I won a full scholarship to the state's best magnet school, 2 counties over. They even gave me a $2,500 grant for books and expenses. For a few days, I was walking on air. I dreamed of gleaming classrooms, a library bigger than our whole town, and the distant, shimmering gates of a university. I'd even looked at a map, tracing the routes out of Harmony Creek, out into the real world. I spent every waking moment planning how hard I'd study, how I'd get into college, and become someone who mattered. The dream lasted less than a week. During dinner on a stormy night, my dad brought it all crashing down. Magnet school. He took a long drag from his hand-rolled cigarette. What's a boy need all that school for? You're gonna end up working with your hands anyway. He paused. And the money? We're saving that for your sister. She gets into a good college. She could marry a doctor, a lawyer. You get that? A real investment. You can go to the county high school. You know how to read and write. That's enough. His eyes had a greedy glint I'd never forget. Across the table, my sister Brittany let out a little laugh, a sound that chills me to this day. It felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I dropped my head, staring at the chipped bowl of mac and cheese until it blurred. Tears dripped silently into my food. That night, I cried into my pillow until it was soaked, biting my arm to stifle the sobs, extinguishing the tiny spark of hope I'd just started to nurture. A few days later, on a suffocatingly hot afternoon, my dad started yelling at me to go mow the lawn. Instead, I ran up to the woods behind our house and hid in a small cave I knew, falling into an exhausted sleep. When I woke up, a crazy idea had taken root. I snuck back into the house. It was empty. I went straight to my parents' bedroom and felt under their rickety bed frame, then behind the pickle jars in the pantry. Finally, in an old coffee can stuffed with rags, my fingers found it. A familiar, thick roll of cash. My $2,500 grant. I grabbed it and ran out the door without looking back. I ran the 5 miles of country road barefoot, my lungs burning, arriving at the bus station in the next town just as the sun was setting. The county seat felt like another planet. Bright streetlights, roaring cars, people dressed in clothes I'd only seen on TV. I wandered the streets like an idiot, a mix of awe and terror. When it got dark, I was cold and hungry. I didn't know you were supposed to get a hotel room, so I fell asleep on a bench in the bus station. Before dawn, I was shaken awake by 2 cops who lifted me up like a stray cat and hauled me down to the station. My dad showed up not long after. The fluorescent lights of the station were harsh, and his face was a stony mask of fury. He didn't say a word. He just walked up and smack, hit me twice hard across the face. My head rang. I saw stars. Back home, the real nightmare began. My mom handed him a thick leather belt. He swung it with all his might, the leather whistling before it cracked against my back, my legs, my ass. I curled up on the floor, screaming, begging him to stop, but that only made him hit harder. When the buckle on the first belt broke, my mom just handed him another. He didn't stop until I was limp and silent. I spent the next 2 weeks in my room, delirious with fever, my wounds festering. A few times, I was sure I was going to die. I'd hear my mom outside the door, muttering, "Would have been better if he'd just died. Save us the trouble and the grocery money." Brittany would sometimes walk by, humming a cheerful little tune. In those 2 weeks, I learned what hate tasted like. And I wanted revenge. The best way to get it? Humiliate them. Make their lives as miserable as possible. I started stealing at school. Anything new or shiny I saw on a classmate's desk, I took it. But I was sloppy on purpose, leaving just enough clues for the teachers to figure it out. Then would come the lecture, the disappointment, and the inevitable call home. Every time I saw my dad or mom shuffling into the principal's office, their faces tight with shame, I felt a surge of triumph. This was what I wanted. Of course, every one of those meetings was followed by another beating. In my junior year of high school, I saw the stacks of cash in the school office, 30 grand in collected tuition and activity fees. The temptation was a devil on my shoulder. By then, the thief label was practically tattooed on my forehead. I took the money, and for the first time, I saw the inside of a juvenile detention center. When I got out a year later, the whole world had changed. People on the street would cross to the other side to avoid me. My dad had opened a small pool hall on the edge of town, but as soon as word got out I was back, his regulars stopped showing up. Brittany never made it to college. With a brother in juvie, her prospects tanked. No fancy boyfriend, no marrying up, no return on their investment. This should have been my victory, but it wasn't enough. A few days later, I stole Old Man Hemlock's truck. That got me my first real prison sentence. After I got out, I stole a motorcycle and drove it straight to the police station to turn myself in. That got me another 9 months. Every trip back inside hammered the nail in a little deeper. I was Caleb Hayes, the town thief. and that was only number 6. Caleb, your burger. Pops Callahan's voice brought me back. He slammed the plate down in front of me. It was a greasy pile of beef, cheese, and limp lettuce. Want a beer with that? No. I picked up a fork and poked at the burger, my appetite gone. So your mom and sister, Pops said, his eyes scanning my face, they really went off to the city for work? This friend of yours, he on the level? I just nodded, my mouth full. Yeah, he's solid. Big city. Big money. Leo Vance. I'd met him on the inside. When I first got to state prison, I was small and scrawny, and a few of the bigger guys in my cell block made my life hell, forcing me to wash their filthy socks, do all the dirty work. But not Leo. He was in for aggravated assault, the undisputed shot caller, and nobody messed with him. For some reason, he took a liking to me, or at least took pity on me. He'd step in when the others were giving me a hard time. Before long, I was his go-fair, swearing I'd follow him anywhere when we got out. We were released around the same time. When I first got out, I actually thought about going straight. I'd even learned a trade in the prison workshop, sponsored by a local garment factory, sewing machine repair. I had a real job lined up, starting September 1 SD. I had a chance. But when I got home, it was like I was a ghost. My dad, my mom, my sister, they looked right through me. No one called me for dinner. No one said a word. I spent 2 nights crashing awake at the funeral home just to get a meal. I even went to social services for help, but with a living family and 2 working hands, I didn't qualify for anything. The hate started to burn inside me again. The same hate that had sent me away 6 times already. I had promised my parole officer I'd stay clean, that I could support myself. Then Leo Vance showed up and changed everything. He found me sitting on the curb outside the library. Caleb, my man, he said with a wide grin. Want to make some real money? Quick and easy. He leaned in conspiratorially. It's simple. You just find me some women folk, young or old, looking to get out of this dead-end town and make some cash. You introduce them to me, and for each one, you get this. He held up 5 fingers and wiggled them. $5,000. My heart hammered. It felt like a winning lottery ticket had just fallen out of the sky and smacked me in the face. I didn't even hesitate. I nodded. Steeling myself, I went home. My parents were arguing about Brittany's dead-end job at the dollar store. My mom was complaining about how so-and-so's daughter went down to Atlanta and was sending home thousands. Brittany herself was restless, talking nonstop about wanting to get away and do something with her life. It was like fate had handed them to me on a silver platter. I casually mentioned that a friend of mine, Leo, had connections at a big company down south. They were hiring, I said, and the pay was incredible. For my parents, who had never been more than 100 miles from Harmony Creek, their eyes lit up with a greedy hope I'd never seen before. Leo came over a few days later. He was slick, charming, slapping my dad on the back and promising room and board, 10 grand a month minimum, plus bonuses. My parents were completely snowed. Brittany could hardly wait to pack her bags. The day they left, my mom actually handed me a hard-boiled egg. Be good while we're gone, she said. Even my dad was getting ideas, rubbing his hands together and asking Leo, hey, you guys, you need any men? I'm still strong as an ox. Leo just smiled smoothly. Just hiring women for this round, Frank. But you'll be the first to know when something opens up. And just like that, my mother and my sister left with Leo Vance. Now, sitting in the diner, I savored my burger. But this town was a dead end. I had money now. I needed to get to the city, have some fun, live a little. I scraped the last of the fries off my plate, threw the 100 on the counter, and walked out of the Summit Diner without looking back. A small city isn't that big, but $10,000 can disappear faster than morning fog. A few weeks later, my pockets were empty. I tried calling Leo, hoping to set up another deal, but his phone went straight to voicemail every time. With the money gone, the guys I knew from the inside vanished too. Defeated, I slumped back to Harmony Creek. My father's pool hall, Frank's Billiards, was still open, though barely, in a row of crumbling brick buildings on the east side of town. The felt on the tables was torn, and the place was empty. My dad was dozing behind the bar. Because I'd just helped my mom and sister, he actually acknowledged my existence with a slight nod. I still had to wait until September 1st for my job to start. So I stayed at the pool hall. When he ate, I'd grab a bowl from the kitchen and eat on the front step. When he didn't, I went hungry. For 2 weeks, we barely spoke. Then, one afternoon, 2 old-timers were quietly playing checkers. My father was staring out the door, lost in thought. Suddenly, he turned, his bloodshot eyes locking onto me. Caleb, your mom, your sister. The phone, it's not working. You need to call your friend. I didn't even look at him. I just kept watching a fly buzz around a cobweb in the corner. I'm talking to you. His voice rose, tight with a rage he couldn't contain. I stayed silent. My complete indifference was the spark that lit the fuse. "You useless damn thief. You curse," he roared, his voice cracking. I heard talk. I heard that guy was a trafficker. He took them. He shot to his feet, grabbed the heavy wooden bar stool he was sitting on, and hurled it at me with all his strength. The stool flew through the air. I tried to dodge, but I was too slow. It caught me square on the left temple. Thud! A dull, sickening sound. My vision exploded into 1,000 points of light, and then darkness. A warm, sticky liquid streamed down my face, blurring my vision. Blood. I looked up, glaring at my father. He looked back at me like I was a stray dog he'd just run over. "All you know how to do is steal, lie, and go to jail. You've ruined my name," he screamed, spittle flying from his lips as he pointed a trembling finger at me. "If they're really gone, I swear to God I'll kill you myself. You worthless piece of trash." I didn't say anything. I knew losing them was a huge blow to him. I just pressed a hand to my bleeding head and staggered out of that hellhole he called a business. Behind me, I could hear his ragged breathing and the shocked silence of the two old men. I had nowhere to go. I dragged myself to the town hall and collapsed against the concrete pillar by the front door. The blood kept coming, and the world was starting to spin. People walking by gave me a wide berth, pointing, their faces a familiar mask of disgust and fear. One day passed, then two. No one stopped. No one asked if I was okay. At night, I just slept there on the pavement. I wanted them to see. I wanted to be ashamed, right on the front steps of the town government. By the evening of the third day, I couldn't move. I was lying on the hard concrete, my mind hazy, certain I was about to starve to death. "That Hayes boy, he's going to die right on the doorstep." I vaguely heard a voice from the security office. "Damn shame. His father's a real piece of work." "You call Frank Hayes?" "What did he say?" "Spit on the phone. Said let him die. It'd be a relief. Said it's the town's problem now." Later, someone lifted me up. A bowl of warm, lumpy oatmeal was poured down my throat. Then I was moved into an abandoned storage shed behind the town hall. The roof leaked, you could see daylight through the walls, and the floor was uneven dirt. This was my new home. One of the town maintenance guys tossed a worn-out broom at my feet, his face wrinkled in distaste. "Caleb, from now on, you sweep the streets from the east end down to the river. We'll pay you $400 a month." His tone held no sympathy, only the weary sigh of someone dealing with a problem. They just wanted to go away. I took the broom. A street sweeper? The town thief, sweeping the streets? The irony was thick enough to choke on. But I had no intention of actually doing it. I'd rather pick through trash cans. I wanted Frank Hayes to see his son living in the gutter. I wanted everyone to see what a worthless, broken thing his son had become. That was my revenge now. Picking trash was the best way. The most humiliating, the most public. But reality was harsher than I'd imagined. The people of Harmony Creek treated me like I had the plague. The woman at the convenience store would watch my every move. Even little kids knew to clutch their candy tight when I walked by. No one spoke to me. No one made eye contact. I was completely alone. It wasn't having the effect on my father I'd hoped for. He just didn't seem to care. So I decided to rob him. Frank's Billiards. When I first got out this last time, I'd had a fleeting, stupid fantasy about making peace, helping him run the place, maybe living something like a normal life. That lasted 2 days. A few of his buddies were playing poker, and they were short a man, so he sat in. I was watching over his shoulder, chatting with one of the guys I'd known since grade school. My dad's luck was terrible, and his face got darker with every hand he lost. On the final hand, he made a stupid mistake and lost the last of his cash. He shot up from his chair, grabbed the coffee pot from the hot plate, and threw the scalding contents right at me. The searing pain was so intense I couldn't even scream properly. I practically crawled out of there that day. I knew then that there would never, ever be a place for me in his life. Tonight, I pried open the rotten frame of the back window and slipped inside. I held my breath, moving through the darkness by memory, heading for the busted filing cabinet where he slept. That's where he kept his cash box. My heart pounded as my fingers closed around the cold metal. "Who's there?" Frank was standing in the doorway, holding a tire iron. His eyes narrowed. "You, goddamn animal. You'll never change. You probably sold your own mother and sister, didn't you?" He raised the tire iron high over his head and brought it down with a guttural roar. Crack! The sound exploded in the silent room. An unbelievable, blinding pain shot through my leg. I couldn't even scream. My vision went black, and I collapsed. When I woke up, I was in the county hospital. My right leg was in a thick plaster cast, hoisted in the air. Every breath sent a fresh wave of agony through me. A cop was sitting by the bed, taking notes with a bored expression. I heard Frank's voice from the hallway. "Officer, you do what you have to do. He's an animal. A lost cause. Far as I'm concerned, I never had a son. Be better for everyone if he just died. Repeat offender. Attempted burglary. And the injury? Self-defense, the report said. My father was protecting his property. So, by the time the cast came off, I was heading back to the one place that always had a bed for me. State prison. This was number 7. Strangely, as the familiar gray walls and electric fences came into view, the knot of tension in my gut finally loosened. A warped sense of security washed over me. Here, there were no tire irons, no screamed insults from Frank, no fearful, disgusted glares from the townspeople. Here, you got 3 meals a day. The guards, like C.O. Davis, would check in on you. The other inmates were all broken in their own ways, but at least you could talk to them. Here, I was just a number, an inmate to be processed. These cage days were the only peace I'd ever known, especially around the holidays. The prison Thanksgiving dinner was the highlight of my year. It became the one time in my miserable life I could feel something close to happiness. I even started to lean into the cycle. When things got too hard on the outside, when winter was closing in, I'd accidentally do something stupid. Then I'd be brought back here, where it was warm, where I didn't have to face Frank, where I could have a guaranteed Thanksgiving meal. Year after year, it went on like this. I lost count. By the time I was 35, I'd been inside 12 times. The corrections officers, especially Davis, tried everything they could think of to reform me. They brought in counselors, job trainers, even pastors. Nothing stuck. My heart was a block of ice. My only thought was, you want to fix me? I'll show you how broken I can be. My last trip was for stealing a kid's bicycle and riding it directly to the police station. This time, though, felt different. Longer. The guards seemed to be trying harder, their talks less about rules and more about life. A few times, their words almost broke through. Finally, after Thanksgiving and Christmas had passed, when summer arrived, my sentence was up. The moment I set foot back in Harmony Creek, the air felt thick, heavy. People stared at me with the usual mix of contempt and caution, but there was something else there now. Something I couldn't place. Pity? I was limping my way to the sheriff's office to check in with my parole officer when a voice called out, "Caleb." I turned. It was Old Man Miller, Kevin's dad, hurrying toward me with his cane. His wrinkled face was filled with an uncharacteristic urgency and compassion. You're finally out," he said, grabbing my arm. "You need to go. Go see your father. He's not going to make it." My whole body went rigid. Frank? Dying? I stood there for a full 5 seconds before I could speak. He could go to hell for all I care. "Caleb, he's your father. He had a stroke. Found him on the floor of the pool hall 3 days ago. He's just hanging on by a thread now. He keeps mumbling something. Sounds like your name, son. Caleb, Caleb." The numbness in my soul felt a sharp prick. He was saying my name? Frank Hayes? The man who broke my leg, who called me worthless, who wished I was dead. He was calling for me on his deathbed. Impossible. It had to be a trick. Another way to humiliate me one last time. Or maybe he'd had a change of heart. The idea was so absurd, I almost laughed out loud. 2 decades of pure hatred can't be undone by a single mumbled word. I roughly shook off his hand. "I told you, it's got nothing to do with me." I turned and started walking away, my limp more pronounced, trying to escape the ridiculous news. Old Man Miller's voice followed me, desperate. "The thing is, son, he's holding on to something, clenching in his fist, and he won't let go." Holding something? What? Gold bars? A savings bond? The only thing he ever cared about was money. But there was a desperate fear in the old man's eyes that stopped me in my tracks. Against my will, my feet turned, and I started dragging my broken body toward the pool hall. The rotten wooden door was ajar, and a stale, dead smell drifted out. My heart pounded against my ribs. I pushed the door open. The room was dark. A makeshift bed, just a sheet of plywood on 2 sawhorses, had been set up in the middle of the room. A figure lay under a thin, filthy blanket, so still I wasn't sure he was breathing. It was Frank. A distant cousin was dozing in a chair nearby. She woke with a start when I came in, her eyes wide with surprise. "C.A. Caleb? You're back." I ignored her. My gaze was fixed on Frank's clenched right hand. I moved to the side of the bed, looking down at the man who had given me life and then done everything in his power to take it away. Slowly, my body trembling slightly, I reached down to pry open his fist. His fingers were cold and stiff, locked around whatever was inside. It took all my strength to peel them back one by one. It wasn't money. It wasn't anything valuable. It was a photograph. A tiny, faded, black and white wallet photo. In the picture, a little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, was grinning from ear to ear, his eyes sparkling with pure, uncomplicated joy. I looked closer. It was me. From a time so long ago, I could barely remember it. A time before I was that damn thief. a time when I still looked at my father with love. Time stopped. A wave of grief, so powerful it buckled my knees, crashed over me. This is what he was holding on to? The father who only ever hit me, who only ever called me worthless. He'd kept this? He'd kept the smile that I myself had forgotten ever existed. I collapsed to my knees beside the bed. My fingers traced the smiling face of the boy in the picture. What I felt wasn't just the weathered surface of an old photograph. It was the crushing weight of all the years we had lost. The tears finally came, hot and unstoppable for the man in the bed, and for the little boy in the picture who had died a long, long time ago. The old cousin watched in silence, tears welling in her own eyes. She quietly turned away, wiping them on her sleeve. Just as the sun set, Frank's shallow breathing stopped. His expression was a mixture of release and regret. I knew he had another regret, too, never knowing what happened to my mom and Brittany. Of course, neither did I. I knelt there for a long time. In that moment, seeing my own forgotten smile in his dying hand, I understood. The fire of my revenge hadn't just burned me. It had incinerated everything and everyone around me. With Dad gone, the family, the home, was gone for good. A few days later, on a cold morning, I was wearing an old jacket the town had given me, holding that worn-out broom, sweeping the street that led down to the river. A faint whining sound reached my ears. I looked over and saw a small, scrawny yellow dog. Its right hind leg was bent at a sickeningly unnatural angle. It was clearly broken. The little thing was filthy, its wet black eyes staring at me, full of fear and helplessness. It looked just how I felt. I stopped sweeping and leaned on the broom, just watching it. The two of us, man and dog, stood there in the cold wind, staring at each other. "It's okay," I whispered. The sound of my own voice was foreign. I couldn't remember the last time I tried to sound gentle. The dog seemed to understand. It took a hesitant step forward, then another, and gave my outstretched hand a tiny, tentative lick. That small, warm, wet touch was like a current, piercing a corner of my frozen heart. I took him home. A few days later, the dog and I limped our way to Old Man Miller's house. He was sitting on his porch, enjoying the morning sun. He gave me a small, warm smile when he saw me. I walked up to him without a word and carefully pulled something from my pocket. It was a small object, wrapped in several layers of old newspaper. I peeled back the paper, layer by layer, my movements slow and deliberate. Finally, I revealed what was inside, an old, rusted, and slightly warped graphing calculator. The first stain on my soul. I gently placed it in Old Man Miller's rough, calloused hand. "Mr. Miller," I said, my voice steady, "could you, when Kevin comes back to visit, could you give this back to him for me?" The old man's lips trembled. He couldn't speak. He just nodded, a single, heavy sound escaping his nose. I didn't say anything else. I turned and, with my legs still aching, began the slow walk to the sheriff's office. I was going to file a missing persons report for my mother and sister. The setting sun cast my shadow long and crooked behind me. My back was bent, my gait was uneven, but for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where I was going. 6 months later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered it. A woman's voice came through the line. "Caleb, it's your mother." I froze, unable to speak. It turned out they'd been trafficked by Leo and his crew to a remote, isolated community. After I filed a report, a long and difficult police investigation had finally found them and brought them home. "Mom," I said, the word feeling strange and new on my tongue. I hadn't said it in 30 years.